welcome to Life, Death, and Cookies. I'm Oliver Tanner.
And I'm Shar Tanner.
And today we are going to talk about marriage. So this is going to be the first of 2 episodes that we're going to be talking about marriage. We decided, you know what, there's a lot of talk around here about death, things like that. We're going to talk a little bit more about life. These 2 episodes, and kind of one of those really important parts of life, which is marriage, right? And, you know, I'm not an absolute expert on marriage. You know, these are basically just the lessons that we've learned, some of the things that we've seen.
Far from experts we are.
Yeah, and, you know, kind of some of our observations, some of our thoughts. Feel free to think we're nuts and to disagree with everything that we say. Or to agree with everything we say. Whatever. It's up to you.
Or take from it what you... I mean, we hope to be married. I mean, of course, we've talked about we probably won't get to 50 years together in this life. Right. But, you know, that... I mean, of course, when you get married, no one is like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get divorced, I guess.
I don't think anybody gets married with the goal of getting divorced.
But we did make it, you know, there's that 7-year itch or whatever, and we're at 22 years, and but neither of us really had great examples of marriage. You know, my parents, they got divorced after I think about 33 years, and I mean,
my parents. So, you know, I've talked before about how my dad died last December. If he had survived another, 2 weeks or something, my parents would have hit 50 years being married. But my parents should have been divorced years ago. I generally don't like a divorce, and generally I say that people should not get divorced. As a general rule, there are exceptions, and I think that my parents were an exception. I think my parents should have divorced a long time ago. Would have been, I think, better for both of them, and better for us as their children. Yeah, I think that...
Or they could have... Sorry, I just cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Or if they could have changed some things early on, they could have...
Yeah, no, I think that my parents could have done some things. Even later on, they could have done some things to improve their marriage. I do believe in the concept of repentance, and believing in the concept of repentance means believing in people's ability to change, right? And so I think my parents could have changed, but they never did. And I think that the damage that they did was worse with them being together than it would have been if they would have split, personally. And I'm saying this as a person who's been married for almost 22 years and who has had children. This isn't, you know, some angry teenager, you know, going, oh, I wish my parents had got divorced.
And that's saying a lot too, because we feel both that both mothers and fathers are essential.
Oh yes, absolutely essential. But I think that my parents did more harm together. But at the same time, they are both kind of such negative people. In many ways, they're kind of perfect for each other. You know? I hate to say that, but it's true.
Okay, well, maybe
anyway,
let's move on.
Let's move on. Let's stop. I don't want this to sound like I'm just ragging on my parents, because that really is not my goal. I would like to learn from their mistakes and be able to help others to learn from it as well.
Yeah, because you had some good examples of marriage as well in your life outside of your parents.
Of my parents, yeah.
Well, and I did too. My parents didn't have... They could, whatever. We're not dwelling on our parents, so we'll move on.
And, you know, and some of those good examples came from some of my friends, watching their parents interact, and as well... some of the people that I knew when I was serving my mission for the church, right? Spent 2 years in Idaho. So I got to observe a lot of different people in a lot of different situations. And really a lot of my views and what has guided how I've approached marriage has come from the doctrines of our church, really. Looking at doctrines, looking at the teachings of Jesus Christ, and then trying to apply them and say, what is just generally the right way to live? What is the right way to approach not only marriage, but any relationship? And that's kind of really been my biggest guiding thing. And we're going to get into that in a minute, because I think kind of one of those most important things in marriage is first setting and then maintaining a list of priorities.
Yeah, and this is something. Well, first I wanted to say that I had good examples as well, but I was just clueless. I wasn't very self-aware, I guess. I was just like, oh, marriage, and so I've learned a lot through trial and error, and I still have a lot of that going on. But as we get into the priorities thing, that this is something that you've been talking about. Maybe even before we got married, but definitely like the beginning of marriage, you've been talking about this list of priorities.
And this is one of those things that I kind of maybe thought of, put together. I don't know how you want to say it, but it is one of those things that I put together largely while I was serving on my mission.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And so I started kind of thinking about this idea of priorities and prioritizing things and choosing what is the thing that is most important. Not just with relationships, but just in life as a whole. Because I didn't really feel like I had very much from my parents. I didn't really get a lot of guidance, more criticism and destructive, conceptualizations about myself and things like that. And so I kind of had to figure it all out on my own. And this is kind of what I figured out on my own.
So should we just list them really quick to give like the preview and then go through each of them? Or should we just start at the first and then go?
I think we can give everybody a little preview. Sure.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. Yeah.
So the priorities are first, God, second, spouse, third, children, and fourth, everyone else. And again, I think, maybe I shouldn't have numbered them necessarily because, of course, you didn't see in that list self.
Right.
And we'll talk a little bit about that. So that might, the numbers aren't necessarily important. It's the order, and we'll insert self somewhere.
I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean by the numbers aren't important.
Oh, because I said first. Well, I mean, because if we put self in there, then it'll change. If you insert self after, say, for instance, God, that would put self second instead of, just for example.
I'm still not following you, and I'm going to kind of push back a little bit on that because I think that the numbers are important.
Okay.
And I think that the order is important. And really, that's the whole point of the list of priorities is the number order. So the point is that self is not actually on there, and there's a reason for it.
Okay.
So we're going to explore that.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why self is not on your list of priorities. So first is God. Okay. Now, I realize that not everybody believes in God. Okay. If you do believe in God, then, putting God's will as number one in your life, that's kind of a personal thing. And so that's just kind of a way to approach life. If you don't believe in God, then I'd say believe in God. But if you really just don't believe in God, if you're an atheist, that's cool. I'm not here to tell you that you're a horrible person because I know many atheists who are wonderful people. And so if, say, you're an atheist, whatever, you don't believe in God, or you're agnostic, you're not really sure if there really is a God, then I would say at least a dedication, a personal dedication to act in moral manners and to conduct your own behavior in a good, moral, and conscientious manner.
Yeah.
And so if you want to put that as your number one in place of God, then okay, that's cool. Personally, I think that God needs to come first because, really even those definitions of what is good, what is moral, really depend largely on teachings about God. One of the things that I think is kind of interesting is many times a lot of the atheists that I know who have said, look, I can be a good and a moral person without believing in your God. Okay, that's cool. I get it. But the things that are defined as good and moral are usually rooted in their upbringing as a Christian, right? Judeo-Christian values. So you don't believe in God, but you still kind of take a lot of those things that come from that belief in God. And you still use them and you still kind of live them. And that's still kind of how you define what it is to be good and moral. And that's kind of, maybe that's a societal thing. That is kind of where our society is right now. That is kind of the building block that we use to decide good and moral behavior. So, God is number one, and then spouse is number two. So, what do you think about spouse being number two?
Well, I mean, we already have this discussion, so that's easy for me. I know a lot of people out there think that children are number two, and marriages suffer from it.
Yep.
And children are important.
We have spouse at number two, children at number three. And a lot of times people flip those around.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you hear the adage, the best thing you can do for your children is to love, well, it's usually for the husband to love the wife, but it's the best thing you can do for your children is to love your spouse, right?
Right.
No matter who it is, Right. And I think that that's a true saying, and it comes from the truth of these priorities.
Right. Well, and also I think it taps into kind of, you have to ask yourself, what is the objective of raising children? What is it that you're trying to achieve with raising children? What is your goal with raising your children? Because I feel like sometimes people have this idea that the objective is to give your children a fun childhood, or to let them run and play and enjoy being children and make life fun for them. And I think that's wrong. I don't think that that's really what the point of all of that. I think that the real goal for raising your children, and I think that if you actually really love your children, that your goal is to use childhood as a time of preparation, right? I mean, so about what percentage of your life have you spent as a child?
As a child?
Yeah.
Well, I mean...
In your childhood took up about what percentage of your life, would you say? So far.
40? 40%?
40%? I'd say your childhood took up, about 40%. That sounds about right. And as you get older, that percentage is going to get less and less. So the vast majority of your life has been spent not as a child, but
as an adult.
Mm-hmm. Now, childhood is this time of really intense learning, right? You learn how to interact with the world. You learn how to interact with other people. But the vast majority of your life is going to be spent as an adult. So it seems to me that parents who really love their children should be trying hard to prepare their children to be able to deal with the vast majority of their life, which is as an adult. You have this small portion of your children's life where you have them to teach them and to help them to grow. And I think that if all you're focusing on is fun, then you're really doing a disservice to your children. If that's what your focus is, then your kids are going to go out, and I think that they're going to come across things in life that they're not going to know how to deal with because you didn't take that opportunity to prepare them.
Well, we can spend more time on this, in the future and do we don't want to, this is a episode on marriage, so.
Right. But we're getting to the point now, though, which is that in order to help your children to know how to deal with life as an adult, one of those big parts of life as an adult is marriage or even other committed relationships. This is a huge part of being an adult.
Yeah.
And this is why your spouse comes as priority number 2 right behind God. Top priority in life above your children, because it's all about setting the right example. You can talk till you're blue in the face to your kids about any topic in the world, and it's going to be in one ear and out the other, okay? There's an old saying, and I believe it's true, nobody cares what you say until they know how much you care, or I don't know, something like that. Sorry, it's not coming out perfect right now. But the point is that it's examples really that people watch the most. Mm-hmm. And with your children, preparing them for adulthood, the best way to prepare them is to model it for them. Show them what a good relationship looks like. Show them what a good marriage looks like through your own marriage, through your own relationship. And I believe, personally, and I guess we'll see the proof in a few years as our kids grow up more and get married, which none of them have yet. But, I believe that us prioritizing our marriage will be the best thing for showing our kids how to approach marriage later on, because I don't want for our kids to necessarily have a wonderful time just with us. I think we find the fun along the way. Mm-hmm. I think that we find the enjoyment along the way. But I think that we teach our children primarily. And we teach them by prioritizing each other first. And then prioritizing our children second. One thing, our kids often, they will try to get us to say, who is our favorite child, right? Mm-hmm. And they engage in this ridiculous saying, but Mommy, I'm your favorite, right? Right? And they're ridiculous. And whenever they ask me, then I say, well, you know what? None of you are my favorite. Mommy is my favorite. And that is always the answer that I give, that Mommy is and always will be my favorite over anyone else. And it's part of how I prioritize you, okay? And, we try to make that clear, and I hope that they can kind of take that same mindset after hopefully seeing me put it into action and hearing me say it 1 billion times throughout their lives. I hope that they can take that concept into their marriages when they get older and say, no, children, you are not my favorite. Your mother, your father is my favorite. One thing I will put in there is this does not mean that you neglect children in favor of your marriage and in favor of your spouse. Okay? Children still are a high priority in your life. They just don't take the top priority. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, there are things like babies have to be fed, diapers have to be changed, things like that. Okay, fine. But that doesn't change the fact that before you go worrying about the baby, think back when we had children in diapers, right? Baby's diaper needs to be changed, baby needs to be fed, okay, cool, whatever. But really, my main priority is making sure that you're doing okay. Is making sure that you're not too stressed out. Making sure that if there is something you need to talk about or whatever, if you need help, I'm helping you, right? I'm placing you as a priority, even over the baby, that baby stuff has to be taken care of. Fine, we get that. But really, it's more about you, right? At least for me. And see, here's the thing. And now I guess we can talk about self a little bit here. Or maybe we'll wait. Let's do the next one on our list of priorities, and then we'll talk about self. Okay? So go ahead with the next one.
So we're on to everyone else.
Yep.
And so it ends there.
Yep, there you go.
So I want to say, because a lot of times, extended family wants to push themselves up. Well, even friends will want to push themselves, or maybe even the spouse will say, yeah, I want to put my friends up, or my mom up higher in there. And after your children, if you want to put your extended family in number 4 and then friends in number 5 and, whatever, you can do anything after number 3. I think you can kind of do how you want. But basically number 4 is everyone else.
Yeah. Extended family, in-laws, all of that, they all go into the category of everyone else. Look, I don't want to offend anyone necessarily, but, I'm sure that you all love your brother, your sister, whoever. But you know what? When they get married, you are just not their top priority in life anymore. Maybe before the marriage occurs, you might be their top priority in life. And this is a married list of priorities. And this is one of the reasons why I will say, now I think I said committed relationships earlier. I don't think that this really does actually apply so much to committed relationships. I think that this applies to relationships that are so committed that you've actually gone and gotten married. That's part of the point of marriage, is making a real commitment that you are going to say, I am not going to break this commitment. I will be faithful to this commitment. And, I mean it. Look, I really mean this. Okay?
Well, and see, that's an interesting point, too, is that you make that choice to be in that commitment. Your children, yes, you make the choice sometimes to have them, right? But you're making an actual, I decided to be your spouse, so that puts as a commitment and that priority.
Yeah. This list of priorities, I think, is for marriage, right? Something official, some kind of an official relationship. This is not going to be broken. We have every intention of seeing this through all the way till the end. I realize not every marriage gets that far. But I think every marriage needs to be approached with that same mindset, with that same commitment.
Speaking of till the end, and not all of them get to that far, is the out of whackness. I can't think of the word right now. Putting things out of order in your priorities is a lot of reasons why marriages don't make it to the end.
Right. And this is where, good segue there, Shar.
Oh, I was sure. Go ahead. You're welcome.
This is a good way to bring in that concept of self. Okay? One of those big misordering of priorities that happens a lot is people putting themselves in that list. Now, look, you deserve to be happy. Right? And this is stuff that we hear all the time. Hey, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to be fulfilled. You deserve this, that, and the other. All right? And I'm not saying that you don't. And so a lot of times what we hear is people talk about this kind of stuff and they say, so live for yourself. Talk about self-care.
Yeah.
Do what you want. Treat yourself, right? All that kind of stuff. Okay. Look. You do deserve to be happy. Let's look at this a little bit though, okay? Now, if I prioritize my own well-being and my own happiness, if I place that as a higher priority, then I'm probably going to be happier. I'm going to be taken care of. Everything's going to be great, okay? Because I have somebody looking out for my well-being and my happiness, okay? But what about her? Does she deserve it? Or should she just take care of her own stuff and, you just do your own thing. You take care of your happiness. I'll take care of my happiness. That doesn't really draw us together as a couple. Mm-hmm. In fact, a lot of times that's just going to lead to us drifting further and further apart from each other, right? So check this out. Now, what if I placed you as your happiness, your well-being as my number one priority, right? You place my happiness, my well-being as your number one priority. Well, guess what, folks? Each of us has our happiness and our well-being as a number one priority. We each get taken care of. We each get to enjoy that happiness, but we also get to enjoy that closeness, that togetherness that comes with a better and enhanced relationship.
Well,
okay, go ahead.
Then that's kind of what I was going to say, is that you were saying, oh, if I put me as number one, I'm going to be happy, but I might say maybe you're not as happy as you could be. You might think you're happy because you're out going partying and, leaving me at home with the kids or what.
Right.
But really, there's all these sayings that become cliche and make no meaning anymore because they come cliche, but they were there for a reason. But, they say if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy,
Right.
There's truth to that as well. And I think it's,
And if mama ain't happy, then papa better be figuring out what needs to happen to help make mama happy.
Yeah.
And see, that's the point that I'm talking about here. And if mom isn't happy, then dad needs to be figuring out how to help mom to be happy. And if dad isn't happy, then mom should be trying to figure out what needs to happen to help make dad happy. Right? And it's working together. It's pulling together. Mm-hmm. It's helping each other out.
It might take some communication to figure out.
It might.
You don't have to know what I need intrinsically necessarily.
Right.
It might take a conversation. Or I might be like, I really need a break, Oliver.
Right.
I'm going crazy. And then you'd be like, okay, what can I do? Or
exactly. And it takes communication. It takes dealing with each other. It takes communicating and, working through problems. And sometimes it takes arguments. I hear people every once in a while say, sometimes it's old people who say, oh, well, my wife and I and all of our years of marriage, we never had a single argument. And first of all, I go, you're full of it. No, I'm sorry, you're full of it. I don't believe that for a second. And if by some strange stroke of fate that is true, then I feel sorry for you. Really, if you've never had an argument with your spouse, I feel for you, because that has got to be just about the emptiest relationship that I could even think of. Those arguments, those conflicts, those are important. But anyway, I want to go back to the self thing, and where does putting yourself into that list of priorities really come in? Look, where self really comes in is with God. Okay? Now that doesn't mean that you are God. It doesn't mean that you place yourself in the position of being God. Where your self comes in is in monitoring and controlling yourself and keeping your own behavior, keeping your own attitudes, your own views aligned with God, aligned with that which is good, right? I can't change any of your motivations. You can't change any of mine. I can't crawl inside of your head, and you can't crawl inside of mine. Mm-hmm. No matter what, you have to self-regulate in our marriage, and I have to self-regulate in our marriage, and in life as a whole, right? And so that putting yourself as a priority comes with putting God as a priority. And if you don't have any way to put God as a priority, or that which is good, something bigger than yourself, something better than yourself, then really, I think that that's kind of what happens is you end up putting yourself as the number one priority. You put your own desires as the thing that needs to be met first. And what is it that really drives your decision? If there's nothing bigger, then I think it kind of by default goes back to just yourself. Your own desires. Well, I want this, you know? So I think that that's really how yourself fits in there. And like you said, all the different conflicts in marriage, I think they come from a misordering of priorities.
Yes.
Right? For example, I don't know, so one example I've talked about with different people, I don't know, maybe I've never really talked about it with you before, but, you know, I remember after your molar pregnancy, it was a hard time for us both, right? And there was a time in there when we were not very cool with each other, right? We had problems between us. And in a lot of ways, you know, we were both hurting. We had lost this baby. We didn't understand why. Some of it was blaming ourselves. You know, oh, well, it's my fault that this happened. You know, seeking for meaning in something that doesn't really have any real meaning to it, right? Some of it is blaming ourselves. Some of it is blaming each other. And the thing was that we were both hurting, and we both kind of went into ourselves.
Yeah.
We placed ourselves as a higher priority. We said, my pain is important to me. My pain is the higher priority. And I think that that's where our conflict came from. And as I look back and where I remember things turning around and things getting better was when we started to actually think about each other's pain, right? We actually started to change those priorities and stop complaining about ourselves, right? You were hurting, and I felt like there were a lot of people who were there for you in your pain, and I felt like there were a lot of people who looked at me and were kind of like, well, you don't matter. You don't mean anything, right? And I felt ignored, and I felt I felt like I was just invisible. But I was hurting too. And I felt like in certain ways, you were kind of taking that everybody else is carrying and not really paying attention to me either. And so I think that, where things changed was when we were able to actually recognize that and say, okay, you know what? My list of priorities is out of whack. And when we got our list of priorities back in sync, that's when I look back and I can remember things actually getting better, things actually improving. And that's just one example. That wasn't really an example of you going off and being selfish and me going off and being selfish and living selfish lives. It was just things happen, and sometimes things happen and we stop paying attention.
Yeah.
Right? And there have also been other times in life where I have just gone and acted selfishly, and you have gone and just acted selfishly. Yeah. And sometimes we excuse it with, well, you know, I'm really doing this for her or whatever, right? But you know when it's not really for another person. How do you approach your job? You know, one thing that is a problem a lot of times is men spending way too much time at work, not enough time at home with their wife. And, you know, you might tell yourself, you know what, I'm doing this for my wife. I'm doing this for my family, right? And maybe that's true to an extent, but how much of it, and only you really know the answer to this, how much of it is really you want a promotion because it validates something about yourself? How much of it really is you have your own ambitions and you want to go somewhere else? How much of it really is 100% it's about my wife, it's about my children? I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm asking you to really take a hard look at yourself and re-examine, because I think a lot of times it's less about other people than we tell ourselves that it is. I think a lot of times we tell ourselves, oh, no, it's for the children, it's for my wife, when it's really kind of a little bit more about yourself. And that's kind of where that self comes in. You have to manage your own motivations. You have to manage where your own priorities really are, because you can't really see what's going on in my head, and you can't really see where I'm placing my priorities. I have to do that, and you have to do that for yourself.
Well, and I think that, it really comes down to being intentional about those things. I have a lot of things actually going through my head that probably wouldn't be... We're not going to talk about it right now, but maybe in a future episode, or I don't know if we'll get into our next... We may have to have a third marriage episode.
Maybe, I don't know.
You talk about the work thing, and then, I really feel like, and this is where a priority outside of our top 2 priorities, or maybe it is actually part of the top 2 priorities, is, I really feel like mothers should, if any way possible, be in the home with their children, and not working. And I know we've had discussions about that, and I think that has to do also with putting your spouse as a priority. But we're not going to get into that right now. And I'm probably going to get a whole bunch of
and that also goes into the idea that your children are actually priority number 3, right? Just because children are not the top priority, just because your spouse is above your children, does not mean that your children are not a high and very important priority in your life. They are. Anyway, yeah, so we are... Time has flown by faster than either of us thought it would. We do have another episode planned to look at this. And so we're going to try and get into... I'd like to try and cover, at least briefly, some of the topics we didn't cover in this. And some of them dealing with some of the practical ways.
Yeah.
Everyday life types of ways that you can place these priorities and keep them and recognize them and stuff like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the concept of just love in our next episode that we're going to have on marriage.
Yes.
So I think that's good for today, and I think it's time to eat some cookies.
I'm so excited for this one.
All right, so this week for our cookies... What are the cookies that we have here, Shar?
They're molasses cookies, but it's one that you and Lindy, Lindy, you want to pass them?
Yeah, so Lindy and I, we have worked together on perfecting some recipes, even just straight up creating some recipes. And this is...
cookies.
For cookies, yes, sorry. Recipes for cookies.
I mean, you do recipes all the time. Probably.
Yeah.
Well, for anything. But
yeah, I make things. I don't necessarily always write them down as recipes. Yeah. But these are ones that we actually found and we kind of tweaked and perfected. So we have recipes that are good, right? And some of those recipes may be coming available for people at some point in the future in a way. I don't know. We'll talk about that. Just a little tease for you. Anyway, so these are molasses cookies, and these are super soft and chewy, and they're your favorite cookie, right?
They're my favorite. That I don't know if they're my all-time favorite cookie, but they might be. But they're my favorite that Lindy makes. It's just so soft, and it's
It's velvety.
Yeah.
Like the texture is really smooth, really soft.
And like
yeah, the moisture is like just perfect. It's not oily, but it's not dry like at all.
This is a cookie that has no crunch, but it still has, you know, it's still the shape of a cookie. It keeps its form and...
Well, it's not dough.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not dough and it's not...
Right. It is really good.
And the flavor is just so...
I think that the...
Well, and I love ginger.
Yeah, it has a good amount of ginger in there. I think that this is... Really, flavor-wise, it's very similar to a ginger snap, but it's way softer.
Ginger snaps, yeah, are like hard.
Yeah, there's no snap to this. There's lots of ginger, no snap, and that molasses flavor is really strong in there.
This is one that, so she's gone through periods where she would sell cookies, and this is one that I have people say, hey, is Lindy selling your cookies? I'd really like to get some of those molasses ones. So I've had several people.
They are really good.
Yeah.
They're really good with some ice cream.
Well, I mean,
everything's good with ice cream, but I'm just saying these ones actually work really well with just like some vanilla ice cream, you know.
But see, I'm a cookie and milk girl, and this is one that, yeah, of course you want milk with it, but it's one that you could do, like some cookies are like, oh, I need milk.
Right.
But this one you can go without milk if you didn't have it, like we don't right now. So.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think we're about ready to close here, and so thank you for tuning in today on Life, Death, and Cookies. If you could share and like and
comment, give us a review. Something nice, something good. I don't know. If you disagree with the stuff we're talking about, tell us why you disagree. Let's hear your thoughts. And if you agree, I guess you can say that too. I will say, if there are some areas where you're thinking that maybe we're a little off base, maybe just hold on a little bit, because we do have another episode on marriage, so we have not fully explored this yet. And you may find that after the next episode where we talk about marriage, that you go, oh, okay, I get it. I agree with you a little bit more now. Or you may listen to that and go, you guys really are nuts. And decide that you don't like anything that we have to say. Either way, we'd love to hear your comments. We appreciate you joining in. We love you guys. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.